to get started, let's talk about venture capitalists and what is a venture capitalist. Now, just by show of hands, how many people currently have a business and they're hopefully making some money on it? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. Is anybody here actively looking to be pitching venture capitalists or coming up? 1, 2, okay, great. That'll just really help me out with the direction of the discussion. Feel free at any point to interrupt me to make things more applicable to your specific business.
Yeah, did we get the slides? Same question I asked the other gentleman that should have asked you.
Yeah.
The slides available?
I believe they'll be made available to the DaVinci group.
Offer them that, right?
Okay, so very good, thank you.
No problem. All right, so what is a venture capitalist? A venture capitalist is made up of two different groups of people. One is a limited partner and one is a general partner. Now, a general partner is the one that everybody's familiar with. They're kind of the public figurehead for the company. So this is going to be your Brad Felds or your Mark Susters, individuals like that. What they do is they go out to limited partners and they actually raise the capital for the venture fund that they put together. Now, limited partners are going to be made up by large corporations, really wealthy individuals, pension funds, insurance companies, organizations with a tremendous amount of cash sitting in the bank that they need to do something with. And so then they'll make it available. The general partners will usually put some of their own skin in the game, but not to the level that these other companies will, especially when you're starting to talk about billion-dollar venture funds and things like that. So the way that it works is a general partner will receive 2% of the total net assets every year to actually run the operations of the fund, pay their own salary, put food on the table, usually have a couple of administrative assistants and a couple of MBAs in the back room crunching numbers. Anytime you go to a venture capitalist office, you'll be surprised, or at least I was, at how few people are actually there. It's a really small, efficient organization. Now, as far as what venture capitalists are looking for, it's called the hockey stick. And the hockey stick is where you've had really sustained growth for a period of time, but it hasn't been that phenomenal. You've been going through kind of your seed round, working with maybe friends and family, angel investors, first couple of years in business. Where they want to jump in at is right at that curve, right before you explode. To George's point, where they can come in, they can give you a nice infusion of cash, and then they can explode and ride your company all the way up. They're typically looking for 10 to 20x return on their initial investment. Now, venture capitalists know from the outset that a third of the companies they invest in are going to fail right out of the gate. A third are going to be what they call kind of the living dead. They're around, they're making money, but they're not really profitable. They're not driving any sort of serious return on the investment. So really only the top third of their fund is going to make any sort of real money. And of that, only 10% are going to be your superstars, your Twitters, Instagrams, Facebooks, things like that really pay for the whole party. Payouts work on venture capital funds that once a fund is closed, so they use up the full, let's call it 500 million that they've raised for one of their funds. Once that's closed, then the venture capitalists move into more of like a mentorship type program where they're really there to help support and help grow that company over a period of time. Venture capitalists are usually looking for anywhere from a 5 to 7 year time horizon before there's some sort of exit via a liquidity event. So maybe that's an IPO, that's an acquisition, or you merge with another company. Anything where a tremendous amount of cash is generated where they can get out, because they don't want to be invested in your business for a long period of time because they need to pay those limited partners back. When a payout does occur, the limited partners receive all of their initial investment back, and then they receive 80% of profits. General partners keep the other 20% of profits. All right, and now I'm going to go on and just talk about myself really briefly and why I'm even up here talking to you guys. I was born and raised in Dillingham, Alaska. It's a Yupik Eskimo village of about 2,000 people. This is the view from my parents' back deck that I took at Christmas. So it's a very rural, interesting place to grow up. I got my undergraduate degree in Northern Michigan University. It was the big city. There was 16,000 people that lived there as opposed to 2,000 people. And it was an incredible opportunity. I started my first company at Northern Michigan, which was an advertising business. Wake up at 6 a.m. to go out and sell advertisements in a student publication before class at 8 a.m. After 23 years of cold weather, I got tired of it, graduated, moved down to Orlando, Florida, got into commercial real estate. was sitting at my desk when the '08 market crash happened, and one day I'm telling people, hey, I can make you, $100,000 more on your property. The next day I'm saying, hey, it's lost half its value. Do you want to sell it? No, okay. So it was a very tough process, but it taught me a lot and I learned a lot about sales. So I stuck with it for about 2 years before getting out. I partnered with one of the investors that I'd met through the process, raised $100,000 and got into property renovations and did that for a while. And it was a fun experience, but I really got tired of living in Florida. I had a buddy from college in Colorado. He said, move out here, this place is awesome. Came out in 2010. It was the best thing I ever did. I never want to leave. So if you're a native, I apologize, I'm staying. When I got out here, I got a job, but on the side, I still really wanted to work with entrepreneurs and small business owners because that was what my passion was, and specifically working with them, helping them to write business plans. But it was a very laborious process, 30 to 40 hours to write one. So I was looking in the iPad marketplace to try to find a business plan app that I could give to my customers so they could write a skeleton, and then I could sit down and kind of fill in the meat and the bones and help really build out the entire plan. Well, lo and behold, there were no business plan apps in the iPad marketplace. I thought that was a huge opportunity. So I had a friend explain the outsourcing model to me, hired a firm in India. What was supposed to be a 12-day build cycle turned into 4.5 months. I really should have just hired Amadeus. But I learned a lot through that process. And the product that came out of it was Business Plan Premier. It's been out for a little over a year now, and we've moved over 12,000 units. When we first started, we were the first movers into the market. We've now had some competition enter in, but we believe we have a superior product. We have really high star ratings, and we continue to get very solid feedback from our customers. In fact, we're going to be launching a cloud-based version of this product here in the next 2 weeks. And we are looking for testers, so if anybody's interested in testing out our software, and we'll make it available to you for free, we're going to retail it for $75. I'd love your guys' feedback and input on that. So around the same time that I was building and launching this app, I started working on my MBA program at CU Denver. CU Denver has a venture capital fund that they were able to create with an endowment from an alumni named Rupp Bridges. And the focus of this fund is to invest in student-based businesses or businesses associated with alumni from the university. It was an incredible opportunity getting to sit in, meeting dozens, hundreds of entrepreneurs, reviewing business plans, getting to work with all the other venture capital funds here in town. Got to know Seth Levine at the Foundry Group, spent some time with him, and it was just a really interesting opportunity. And I'll be pulling some of the stuff that I'm speaking about from those experiences doing that. Continuing to run the business, we formally got it launched in January of 12, and it took off pretty quickly. As soon as people heard that we had built an app for ourselves, they wanted us to build apps for them. I don't know if this is sharing too much information here, but we have a phenomenal partnership with Amadeus. And as you were mentioning that you guys can kind of fit in and help and fill a void for software solutions that don't fit IBM. Under $5 million products, well, we kind of did that same thing for Amadeus under 20,000. And it was the same situation where there was a gap in the marketplace because overhead and development is just intrinsically expensive process. Developers are in such high demand, salaries are really high. As a young startup, we could come in and we could fill that void to help entrepreneurs and small business owners get apps built. And in fact, we would make strategic investments in the best app ideas that would come through, which was part of the way we were able to offer people such low prices on those apps. The business continued to grow. We went full-time in May of 12, my partner and I. We were fortunate enough in May to win the Bard Center business plan competition. There was 40 to 50 other student businesses that applied for it. And then in October, we competed in the Office of Economic Development's business plan competition. There's 150 to 200 local Denver companies that applied. The second place team had already raised over $1 million in venture capital financing. And we were fortunate enough to win that competition as well. People always ask, well, did you use your own product? Well, we drink the Kool-Aid. We used our own product to win both of those competitions. So it was a great, really exciting experience. And in just those first 7 months that the business was live, from May of 12 to December of 12, we hit 6 figures in revenue. So it's been a pretty exciting roller coaster ride for us. But now I want to get into the presentation of how to pitch venture capitalists. I would really like to follow up with what Larry said at the end of his speech of don't do it, and I would like to agree with you. So I'm going to make the first half of this presentation saying don't pitch venture capitalists. There's other ways to raise investment and to build businesses without doing that. However, you guys want to know how to pitch venture capitalists, so I'll spend the second half providing advice, feedback, and ideas on how to go through pitching venture capitalists. So to highlight why I don't think you should pitch venture capitalists, or especially as early stage companies, why you shouldn't pitch venture capitalists, consider Mark Zuckerberg. Now, put yourself in his shoes. Not $23 billion Mark Zuckerberg, but freshman in college Mark Zuckerberg, and you have an idea to start a business. We won't go into details of where you got that idea from, but you have it. So you go and you tell your freshman roommate about this idea that you have. And he likes it, he's on board, he gives you $1,000 for 34% of your company. You don't have anything at that point, so that's good enough. That's your friends and family around. It's exciting. Let's move forward. Well, the company idea sticks. People like it. You start to grow. You move out to California. Then you go and talk to Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel invests $500,000. But something happens here. He doesn't want proportionate to that $1,000, some 150% of your company. Now, because your company is becoming more valuable, he only wants 10.2% of your company. You continue along, you spread across the entire country, you start reaching overseas. Now a major corporation, which is very desperate for some kind of social media presence, gives you $240 million for 1.6% of your company. There's a very important lesson here that underlies this, and that is when you are first starting your company, capital is insanely expensive because you are not proven and your product is not proven. And so people are going to give you $1,000 and they're going to take a third of your company. So I would highly recommend waiting to raise that money, because the longer you're around, the more valuable you become, the more market validation that you receive, the more money you're going to get from investors, and the less ownership and equity you're going to have to give up for those bigger chunks of cash. This really kind of focuses the first 2 points on what I was saying, but it's also a time-intensive process to raise capital as well. You can expect to spend 6 months and having 3 to 4 meetings every single day to raise any sort of serious capital for starting a business. And what that does is that really takes you away from your company and focusing on what it is that you're trying to build. The other problem when you bring in investors, specifically venture capitalists, is they do have that 5 to 7 year time horizon where they want to get their money back because they need to pay their limited partners off. As a result, they're going to be pretty friendly and cordial for the first few years, but then it starts to be, when are you selling? When am I getting my money back? And they really start pushing the company in that direction. And maybe you are building a lifestyle business where it's just about the longevity, having something to pass on to your kids. Well, they're not going to want that. They're going to want to be pushing you towards getting acquired by a major corporation or having some kind of an IPO event. In both situations, it fundamentally changes the culture of your company. So what I would recommend instead is testing the hypothesis for your business first before you invest all that time and energy in trying to build a company right through financing. Instead, make sure that people really want the product that you're providing. And this in a way goes back to what John was saying about faking it. Try to create a beautiful sales brochure, something that looks really professional for your product, and go out and just see if you can sell it to people. See if you can get people on board. We built our entire company this way of testing the market to make sure people wanted a product before we invested our time and resources into building it. Now, there's a lot of really great things that happen during this process. The first and the best result is you get sales. So now you have revenue coming in to actually build your product. Let's say you go out and pitch it to someone, they're like, I love it, I want it. You say, great, I'll have it to you in 60 days, but I need $5,000 or $10,000 or $3,000, whatever it is. Sell 3 people, that's your seed capital right there. Go out and build the product, you've got ready-made customers, and you can hit the ground running, and that's a fantastic opportunity. Another thing that can come out of that is they can tell you what they want. As entrepreneurs, we think we know what everybody wants, but until you really go into the market and start talking to people, you don't know. And so they might say, I love those 70% of your features, but these 30% suck. These do nothing for me. However, I would love these 30% of these features. So now when you go to market or you build your minimum viable product, not only do you have customers, but you have a great idea that's been tested that you've gotten feedback on. So you're coming out with a much more valuable product right out of the gate. The third thing that can happen is that it can be completely rejected. And it's really hard to hear people tell you that your baby is ugly, but it happens. And it's better to find that out on day 5 than it is to find that out on day 500. After you've struggled for a year and a half, trying to sell a product that nobody wants, either investing all of your money, mortgaging your home, worst case scenario, raising money from other people, and now you have to let them down as well. Those are all really bad situations. So it goes back to what John was saying of, if you're gonna fail, fail quickly. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you've probably got 100 other ideas, then you just go to your second idea. And that way when you do come to market, you do come to market with a product that people really want. And this all goes to iterate and innovate. Don't be so focused on one thing and thinking that's the thing. Be flexible, be open, see how the market responds to you and what the market is telling you that they want. This all goes to kind of a lean startup methodology. If you haven't read The Lean Startup, I highly recommend it. The 4-Hour Workweek is another really good book. Good book. The guy that wrote it's kind of pompous, but there's some key nuggets in there that are helpful. And then Brad Feld's book, Do More Faster, are all really great tools for understanding this whole process of doing research, getting a minimum viable product, and getting to market and testing your hypothesis. The Lean Startup, Do More Faster, and the 4-Hour Workweek. Do More Faster is Brad Feld. What's that? Yes, I think so. Thank you. Eric Weiss. Eric Ries. Consider raising other forms of investment. If you're new to the entrepreneurial small business world, you think, I need to go out and raise $100,000 or $10,000 to get my product off the ground. That's not necessarily true. Can you go to vendors, suppliers, employees, raise investments from them? Think through what you would use that money for and go to that source. App Ventures, we invest in app ideas. So a client could go to a venture capitalist, spend 6 months, raise $50,000, then come to us to get their app built, or they can just come right to us and we'll make an investment in their app idea and help them bring that product to market. And now we've also created something called aligned economics, where I'm very invested in the success of that business and want to do everything I can to help them out and help them succeed in that process. A great example, one of the companies we invested in when I was on the fund was a company called Waste Farmers. And they've now changed their names, I think they're called Maxfields. But they do really phenomenal potting soil. And what they do is they take leftovers from restaurants and grocery stores, compost it, add in a bunch of nutrients and other things like that, and sell really high quality soil at places like Whole Foods. So in the process of coming to us looking for investments, they really wanted to get started. And so what they needed investment money for was land. They needed a place to do all this composting work. So what they did is they found a farmer who had extra space on his land, went and talked to him. He loved it. They came up with a mutual valuation for Waste Farmers at the time. And then he let them use this plot of land. It had a tool shed on it, had everything that they needed. And for each month that Waste Farmers didn't pay rent, they would take whatever they agreed to as far as the rent price in equity in the company, $1,000 a month or whatever it worked out to. But it was no money out of Waste Farmers' pocket. The farmer wasn't using the land anyways. And now Waste Farmers had a fantastic kind of built-in investor advisor who had been doing agricultural work for 20 years. And so it was one of those, proverbial win-win situations that you always look for. The next part, this is obvious, keep your expenses low. You see the TVs, the movie shows, anything on TechCrunch, where companies are installing 3-story slides or flying everybody to Barcelona or installing hammock rooms and all kinds of crazy things. Sure, great. Do that when you're sold to Facebook for $1.3 billion. When you're a startup, don't do that. Try to keep your expenses as low as possible. The two sides of the coin. Either generate more revenue or keep costs down. And keeping costs down, especially as a startup, is a really great avenue to go. The other thing is, can you turn an expense into a revenue? So at App Adventures, we were looking for office space. We didn't need to get anything tomorrow. We had some time to wait until we found the perfect opportunity. We found 1,000 square feet in Cherry Creek, and it was listed at about 30% under market rates. It had been a storage room for the last 2 years, and the landowner wanted to start making rent. So we got a killer deal on it. They did all the TI, completely built it out to our brand and specifications, and it came with 3 offices, and we only needed 1 of those offices, so we sublet it out the other 2 offices. So now our rent is a break even, doesn't cost us anything, and if we do decide to just all live in the bullpen, we could rent out that 3rd office, and then our office expense would be a profitable revenue source for us. The other thing to do is look to see if you can extend payments. So we work with a lot of developers, and we do a ton of work overseas. The teams that we've found are really great at what they do. We've built up a good relationship. They don't charge us anything in the beginning, and then we have milestone payments along the way. But what we ask our clients to do is pay half up front, and then pay half when the project is done. So there's nothing out of our pocket to hire the developer. The client pays us the chunk of cash. We keep it in savings so that we can pay out the developer. But if the developer makes any mistakes, we can slot in a new developer and things like that to get that product done without paying any money out of our own pocket. Versus the other side of that equation would be, well, I'll hire the developers, I'll start paying them money and hope to collect revenue from the client on the other side. It's a bad idea. You can get stuck in the middle trying to cover that gap. Then the other great thing to do is create industry partnerships, which is what I alluded to with Amadeus. Find what would typically be considered competition and see if there's ways you guys can work together and you can help each other out. I think it's easier in the technology industry because we're just inherently a friendly group. We've worked with some like design agencies, and we've tried to make like mutual introductions, and it was like a bomb went off. You don't know how our industry works, we don't talk to them, da 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 da. So I don't know what your industry is like. Within the tech industry, it's pretty friendly, and we've got some really good relationships like that. Also look to see if you can find partnerships with other organizations that focus on the same clients but don't do what you do. So we have a great relationship with an advertising company, and they do marketing, design, all that kind of ad work, but they don't do any mobile app solutions. On our side, we do mobile apps, but we don't do any of the design, advertising, any of that kind of stuff. And so there's a great opportunity there for us to market each other's services, makes both of us look bigger than we actually are, and then we can swap clients back and forth. We built our entire service-based business off of that model when we first got going at $0 out of our pocket versus investing 5 or 10 grand in these huge marketing campaigns that some companies do. And then the kind of final point to this bootstrapping section is find smart advisors. So you hear about smart money, and that's where you raise investment from individuals with experience in your industry. Well, find advisors with experience in your industry, preferably people that have already successfully exited a company or something like that, because they're going to have fantastic vendor and supplier relationships, people they can introduce you to. Best case scenario, they can introduce you to customers. They can also introduce you to some phenomenal employees and really provide that background and experience that you might not otherwise get. There's a saying that says you're the average of your 5 closest friends. Well, I think that really carries over into business, and if you surround yourself with people that are successful, more successful than yourself, I think that brings you up to the next level. There's always a fear within entrepreneurship and small business of, I'm going to be outshined by somebody else, so I need to keep somebody else around that's not quite as intelligent as me. It's BS. Get the smartest people that you can find that have done everything you want to do, and you'll naturally just be brought up in that process of being surrounded by those great people. So, alternatives to VCs. Friends and family, everybody's heard of them. This is for your just really early stage, $500 to maybe $5,000, where you need to get that minimum viable product built so you can get it into the market and see how people respond to it. Next, start looking at angel investors. Angel investors are typically going to start at about $20,000 for an investment, and they start to top out around $200,000 to $400,000 is kind of the typical sweet spot for angel investors. And they're going to be usually wealthy individuals. They're individuals that have exited a company already, have had a long 30-year career in some industry, have some nice big savings, and they kind of want that rush and excitement of being in a startup without kind of changing their lifestyle and missing tea time and staying up late and not sleeping and things like that. They're a good group of people to go and work with. Within the Denver Boulder community, there's several fantastic organizations around this, including the Rockies Venture Club, Angel Capital Summit. There's a group down in Colorado Springs called Accredited Members International. They have a network of about 3,000 angel investors all over the country. And then this last point of go for crowdfunding. That is something that's really picking up, and if you do it right, there's a lot of great opportunities around that. How many people have heard of the Pebble smartwatch? Okay, so these guys are the rock stars of the crowdfunding world. They built a smartwatch where, imagine basically an iPod Nano on your wrist, and it has all the digital functionalities that a smartphone would have or anything else. They were looking to raise about $200,000. They raised $10.2 million, I believe. They got more money than they ever would have going direct to an angel or a venture capitalist. They went right to the market. This is such a cool opportunity that really has never existed before, because you're building awareness for your product, you're building in customers for your product, and you're generating that revenue and that market validation that you need. So if you haven't done it or you don't know much about it, I'd highly recommend looking into it. It's a really cool opportunity. All right, venture capitalists. So this last part of the presentation, I'm going to focus on what venture capitalists are looking for, what you should be looking for, ways to meet them, and ways to pitch them. Going back to what I was saying on the first slide, venture capitalists are really looking for established companies. They're not really designed for early stage seed startups. These guys are looking to invest $500,000, $5, $10 million and get you on that rocket ship to where they can get their 10 to 20x on their investment. One thing I will disagree with Larry about is NDAs. I think those are really important with your employees, but having spent a lot of time around entrepreneurs, you can always tell a rookie entrepreneur because they're like, I need you to sign my NDA. You have to sign my NDA. I hate to say it, but ideas are a dime a dozen. Being in an industry where I create things for people, from my dad to my fiance to elementary friends to anybody I've ever met on the street, I have an idea, here it is, but if you build it, I want half. And I'm like, bullshit. If I build it, I'm keeping it because that's where all the work is at. Ideas are very easy to come up with. Where the work really comes in is actually building that product, taking it to market. I go the other route. I say shout your idea from the top of a mountain and tell anybody you can and get people invested. Build brand ambassadors, people that either want to give you money, buy your product, provide you with advice, or make introductions to other people. Yeah.
Because that can be a disclosure. And if it does eventually go somewhere and you've already disclosed it a year before, it's gone.
Yep, I totally understand. Two sides to the coin. I get it.
I've had it happen, that's why I say that.
Oh.
It's actually an actual experience where I mentioned it and then I built it out a year later, but someone brought up that it was publicly disclosed to the patent office so that I could do it.
Oh no.
So you have to be careful.
Gotcha. And okay, and fair enough. And those instances do happen. Most times there is so much work and so much energy that goes into taking an idea, turning it into a product, and making it successful and bringing it to market that you've got, I mean, that's got to be the dream that you've had for so long to be able to do that and to risk that. But you do have to be careful.
Well, once you do have your product, you do want potential investors to sign an NDA.
Investors won't sign NDAs. I don't know. Sorry. He said that you will want, once you have a product, to have investors sign your NDA. I don't know a single venture capital fund that signs NDAs. They won't do it. Ideas are a dime a dozen. Foundry Group, for example, gets 2,000 business plans a year. That's not even like people that just pitch them ideas. That's like, here's my business plan. They only look at 160 of them. And they only actually invest in about 8 of them per year, and that's incredibly active for a venture capital fund. That would just be my recommendation, is that most investors won't do it, because then if they sign your NDA for your product and somebody else brings them a similar idea a year or 2 years later, or something that only shares 10% with your idea, they now can't invest in that, because if they sign an NDA, they invest and they build that, they're now liable to be sued, that they could be construed that they took that idea and brought it to that other organization over there.
Well, that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just because
Yeah. Right.
Are you
It's
saying just because they bring all the money to the table, they can do anything they want? Is that the business model?
It's not the business model, but it curtails their business. Sorry, repeat the question just so I can tell it to the camera.
Just because they bring all of the money to the table, does it mean they can do anything that they want?
So just because they bring all the money to the table doesn't mean they can do anything they want. Short answer, kind of. I mean, unless it's just the most rock star idea that's ever been had in life. Appet, we invest in ideas. We've never signed a single NDA. Of the 150 people we've talked to, I think we lost 2 clients because of it. Of all the venture capitalists I know, none of them sign NDAs, because then it now limits what they can do down the road. And the way I explain it to clients is I was like, hey, if I sign your NDA now, then I can't do anything down the road. But conversely, your idea, I've heard parts of it before over here. And if I had signed NDAs on those, I now couldn't offer any sort of investment in your idea.
Do you sign an NDA once you're involved at some point, or is it just never?
Never.
Even when they open the whole kimono, you don't sign one?
Yep. So what we tell them is that all of our employees sign NDAs. Everything that we have is kept within 128-bit encryption. It's all stored and it's in a very secure location. But no, we never sign NDAs.
Have you done any business overseas?
Probably about half of our business is done overseas.
And you've never had a problem with
Can I just kick in one thing here?
Sure.
You can still protect your intellectual property without NDA, just mark it, and there are common law obligations to not misappropriate some of these trade secrets. So the fact you don't have an NDA doesn't mean it's end of game.
Correct,
Be
especially
sure you point it out, mark it, you're very
if you have a trademark, copyright, patent, any of those other legal tools to help protect your idea. So she asked what I got my degree in. I got my degree in entrepreneurship. So it's basically like small business management was what my
That's actually a major.
yeah. It's taken over. It's Northern Michigan University was a school that I went to. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 schools now around the country offer entrepreneurship programs. It's definitely new. It's only been in the last 5 to 10 years. But in addition to entrepreneurship related programs, you also are seeing business plan competitions being launched, incubators, venture capital funds, all these kinds of things to support students and ideas and creating businesses.
But you went to CU Denver as well. Did you get a master's degree?
She's asking where I got my master's. I'm working on my master's degree right now at CU Denver.
In what?
Business strategy.
So, wait,
So when we were first starting our company, sitting down with Brad Feld and Seth Levine at the Foundry Group, they were explaining that they never ever sign NDAs and why they don't sign NDAs. Our law firm's KKO, chatting through it with KKO, they also recommended that we don't sign NDAs.
so something.
I think is the key here. It's more of my own personal opinion of shout it, sell everybody, tell everybody about it. And I know this is controversial. I go through it with every single one of my clients. So I'm definitely not saying that it's not. And from the age gap, I would say it's really more of the number of businesses they've been involved in. Even older individuals that have been in 1 or 2 companies don't ask us to sign NDAs. It's more the individuals that this is their first real endeavor. And the other thing too is that most people think that their idea is the most unique thing on the world. And I'll tell you, it is shocking how many times you're like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I never would have thought of that. That's so interesting. And you go and you look on the web and there's 3 competitors that are established and that have been around for 5 years. On the other side of it, if you tell too many people, somebody could steal your idea, and that is a tremendous risk. So I see both sides of it for sure.
And I had some experience too with another gentleman, and I asked him, do you copyright your stuff? He goes, we don't, because we're not in the game that we want to be chasing people down. It's just easier for us not to do that. So it is a choice.
Yeah, and it's not only of going to court and getting the judgment against them, it's then chasing them down and trying to get them to actually pay up for that judgment, which all takes you away from your business. If nothing else, just take it as a recommendation when you're going to pitch, especially angel investors and venture capitalists. I would highly, highly recommend not bringing up an NDA because it's something that'll make you look like a first-time entrepreneur when you really want to look like you're a seasoned pro at this and you're comfortable with your business and with your ideas.
The key there is to have your idea protected already before you.
Correct. Yeah, already have the patents, trademarks, copyrights, have everything else, be using it in commerce, all those kinds of things. I'll try to move along really quickly to get through these last portions of it. What venture capitalists also want is product-based businesses. Now, this is more of a general rule of thumb. It's not saying they won't invest in service-based companies, but what they're thinking about is if this entrepreneur leaves or dies, is this still an asset? Is this still a product? And again, to John's point, it's really the entrepreneur in any startup that's making the business worth anything. With a service-based business, it's kind of a job. If you don't show up to mow that lawn, write that line of code, or do this, there's really no value in it. But if you have a product that can be making sales while you're sleeping, sitting on a store shelf, wherever, then that is a tangible asset with a tremendous amount of value. At least in our experiences on the fund and from other people that I've talked to, 70 to 80% is 100% product-based. The other 20% is service, but still backed by a product. So it's just kind of a general rule of thumb. Previous fundraising rounds, there's a bit of a herd mentality with venture capitalists. They don't want to be the first one in. They want to know that somebody else believed in your product, believed in your business, and put their money where their mouth was. And something that you won't hear a lot, but is also important, is your advisors. Venture capitalists will ask, have your advisors invested in this business? Or have they just taken some stock to give you their advice? So as you get further down the road to that where you're working with very professional angel investors or venture capitalists, that's something that they're going to ask. So just be prepared to have that discussion. And it doesn't need to be a lot of money, but it can be if you get 2-3 years down the road, you're like, hey, Mr. Advisor, I really appreciate it. We're growing really fast. We're getting ready to start raising some money. Would you mind kicking in $5,000? You know, something like that, just to show that the advisor also believes in the business and is willing to put their money, you know, where they're putting their time as well. Okay, what you should want. Favorable ownership structures. Owners can easily get pushed out of companies if they don't have favorable ownership structures. For all the challenges that Sean Parker brought to Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook, one thing he really established was solidifying Mark Zuckerberg as the owner of Facebook and kind of walling off any competition from any investors or anybody else and challenging his authority. Something that didn't work so well for was Steve Jobs when he got pushed out of Apple in the mid-90s. So be really careful that as you're bringing on investors, A, be aware that your equity and your decision-making capabilities are being reduced, and that if you give up too much and you get too diluted, you could eventually be forced out of your own company, which would be terrible.
Just hopefully quickly, the example you used on Facebook, the guy that had 35% in either one of the movies, et cetera, they actually didn't ultimately get that percentage. They bought him off. But in court, he actually didn't get his 34%.
No, I think he ended up at like 6% or 3% dilution. Yeah, there's dilution. So you start out with a seed round, then you raise a Series A, Series B, Series C. Each time you do that when new investors come on, the previous investors get diluted down in their value. It's not worth as much. And so,
He didn't have the brains to say non-believable.
right, correct. I think you can, yeah. You can try. And that all goes back to that favorable ownership structure, which goes back to the original story that the sooner you are in starting your company, the less control and the less power and the less negotiating ability you have. The longer you wait, the more market validation you have, the stronger your negotiating position comes. And maybe you can get some of those more favorable ownership structures built into the contract. I'd also highly recommend doing background on the VC. Just because somebody's willing to offer you money, you shouldn't immediately jump at that opportunity. You should find out what their previous background is, what their experiences are. Have they successfully helped companies grow, or have they squished half the companies that they've invested in so that they don't waste any more time on them? What do they like to work with? Are they going to be a bully? Are they going to step back? Are they going to support you? How's that whole process going to go? Interview them like you might interview an employee, and try to see if you can talk to other entrepreneurs that they've invested in to see what those experiences are and backgrounds that other people have had with that venture capitalist. And then third, really look for smart money. Look for individuals that have experience in your industry. If you're starting a high-tech nanotechnology company, probably shouldn't go raise money from an like agricultural business. Really try to focus on other people that have been successful in your area for the same reason as looking for smart advisors, because they can introduce you to suppliers, vendors, employees, customers, other companies, people like that, and they have that experience and that background to really help you grow your company and take your company to the next level. How to meet VCs, network like crazy. Attend as many events as you can. As I mentioned previously with the Foundry example, they get 2,000 qualified pitches, of which they look at 6% of those. However, if you know Seth or Brad or Mark or any of these other big investors, your opportunities to be one of those 160 that they put real time into goes up substantially. A big thing that exists with the internet now is social media and blogs. If you aren't already, and if you are interested in venture capital, read Brad Feld's blog. It is phenomenal. He has some incredible advice on there as far as when you get to the VC funding round and raising serious capital and really good ways to go about it. So read these venture capitalists' blogs, comment on them, try to get dialogue going with them. A really cool story. Brad Feld runs a lot of races. He was doing a marathon on the East Coast, and somebody in Boulder just tweeted at him. Just saw you did a race, that's awesome. Why don't we go running together sometime? And Brad Feld responded and said, sure, let's meet up at so-and-so place at 7 a.m. So this guy met up with him and went for a run. And it was a really cool opportunity for him to get to meet Brad on a personal level. And as you start to build these opportunities, ask for ideas, ask for advice. Don't ask for money. Build those connections and those relationships first, and then as you get down the road and you become a known quantity, they know your background and your experiences, then go ahead and say, hey, also, by the way, I've started this company, I'm looking to raise some capital, could you take a look at it? Any of these kinds of personal connections that you can create with VCs will really help out your cause. And then be tenacious. You really have to be tenacious. 6 months to raise around 3 to 4 meetings every single day. You just have to stick with it and really be putting yourself out there and really trying to talk with and engage with as many people as you possibly can. And venture capitalists are really going to be looking for things like previous successes. The thing they love to hear more than anything else is, I recently exited X company. They love to know that you have those past successes because it makes you more credible. It's kind of like your resume as an owner, basically. And they also really want to see that you have industry experience. When I first started App Adventures, I would have been a terrible person to invest in because I had zero software experience. But give me another 3 years and then I can go in and say, hey, I've got 5 years background running a company, doing all these things. I now have some of that track record to really help with my credibility. Because at the end of the day, VCs, angel investors, even friends and family, they're really investing in you as much as they are investing in your product or your business. It's because they know you and they believe in you and they know you're going to make something successful. And so they're really looking for that connection. All right, and then the last is how to pitch venture capitalists. People always ask, since I have business plan software, do I need a business plan to get started? No, absolutely not. Create a product, go out there and try to sell it. That's how I'd recommend getting started. But when you get to the point where you are trying to raise money, you do need a business plan. And you need to know that business plan forwards and backwards. Make it very concise. You may only get 10 minutes of that investor's time. If you make it to that 160 that the Foundry group looks at, you may get 10 minutes of them actually reading your plan. Don't write some insane 60, 100-page business plan where you try to put every shred of information conceivable. Try to make it 15 pages, 10 pages. Really boil it down and make it right to the point so they can get a quick, comprehensive understanding of your business plan and have really solid financials in there with a really clear path of how you're going to make money. Another thing that venture capitalists hate is this is a $50 billion industry. All we need to do is get 1% of it and we'll all be wealthy. There's no value there. There's no connection. Those don't make any sense. Say, we've been in business for 3 years. We've been growing by 200% every single year. We believe at our current growth rate with your cash infusion that we can hit 1% of the market in 5 years. And here's the path that shows how that happens. That's what they want to hear, and that's how they'll believe in that value proposition. Remember, the people that you're pitching are general partners. They're borrowing somebody else's money. They want to look good above all else. They want to be successful, and they want you to be successful. Because if you're successful, they're successful, and then they can go and raise another $1 billion round 5 years down the road to continue the cycle of their business and their growth. So really, they're looking to see that you're going to be successful because that makes them look good. So know that. And then when you come in to actually pitch them, memorize your plan forwards and backwards. Know your industry, know your product, know your value proposition. There's nothing worse than when you're sitting in there and somebody comes in to pitch and they're either A, really unprofessional, or B, don't know what they're talking about. We had someone where like, what seemed like a good product, and we're like, okay, tell us how it works. What's your value proposition? And they just rambled for 15 minutes. And at the end, we were all more confused than when we started. It should have been 30 seconds. I think Warren Buffett said it best. He's like, if you can't draw it with a crayon, I won't invest in it. They want it to be simple. They want to understand it very quickly, because the more complex it is, then it seems like the harder it is going to be to bring it to market and to really make it successful and to fulfill all of those needs. And then practice, practice, practice. So I think a big part of why we won the 2 business plan competitions, which were judged by venture capitalists, is we knew our business plan forwards and backwards. And we could just get up there and we could pitch it and we could talk through all of it. Some of our competitors would have note cards, they'd be fumbling through, they'd miss a point, they'd throw in a lot of ands, ums, likes. Those things all kill a presentation. So be very, very professional, because that'll reflect how you're running your business. Because if you can't come in and accurately pitch your business, they're going to wonder if you can accurately run your business. Not that that's valid, but that's just something that they'll be thinking through. If you're pitching venture capitalists, yeah. Sorry, is a prototype required? If you're going to friends and family, potential customers, maybe even some angel investors, not necessarily. At least for us, we didn't invest in a single thing that wasn't already created and already generating revenue. Okay, so in summary, just get started already. Get out there, test that hypothesis, build that minimum viable product, see if you can raise other forms of investment so you don't need to go after investors, so that you can retain ownership of your product, and then pitch the right investor when you're ready. My favorite quote is, "Only those who dare to fail greatly ever achieve greatly." Robert F. Kennedy. Thank you.
So I think you've really answered this one, Rob, but I can't help but ask it anyway. How did you get so damn smart at such a young age?
I'm not kidding you. A year and a half ago, I got carded for a rated R movie. I'm like, well, you're only off by like 11 years, but whatever. I'm at a bar with friends, and they'll, sit down, and as soon as they see me, they're like, all right, we're going to need everybody's IDs. We don't know who brought the minor, but. Cool. Any questions?
I guess it really is, from what I know of you now, it's really you get involved and you don't let anything stop you. So you gain quite a lot of experience just by living quickly.
Yeah, it's the 3rd startup now, and just don't be afraid to ask, I guess, is the other thing. Like, raising the money in Florida, I had really no clue what I was doing, but I knew commercial real estate, and I had established a really good rapport with that investor, and I was like, here's what I'm going to go do. And he was like, great, go do it.
So what do you find the best sources of advice? You didn't mention social media, certainly blogging and stuff like that. That's what my takeaway is.
Yeah.
Would you give any other recommendations for
I would
developing advisors?
Great question. He wants to know how you go about finding good advisors. I would really try to find the person that you want first, and then find a way to get into that person. One of our advisors is Greg Lenz, who's the Chief Information Officer of ClickBank. He was the DBJ CIO of the Year in 2011. We knew he would be a great advisor. We found a connection and we went and pitched him, and he loved the business, and we were able to bring him in. So especially if you're in a specific industry, try to find areas where people are doing what you want to do or have done what you want to do, and just go and talk to them. people I found, and I feel this is really especially true with Colorado, genuinely want to help other people and want to help other people succeed. Having lived in a couple of different states, I lived overseas for a year, I can tell you guys that Colorado is a very unique place. And I just recommend going and asking, and you'll be surprised how many times people say yes. Cold calling a major app development corporation out of the blue and being like, hey, we're a startup, this is what we're going to do, can you help us? And them saying yes. So it's a fantastic question. She wants to know how our business plan software is secured. So the product that we've had for the last year and a half, where we've moved the 12,000 plus units, that's localized on your iPad. So that's actually never uploaded, it doesn't go anywhere else, it's saved there. So no one will ever see that but you. For the cloud-based solution that we'll be launching in the next 2 weeks, that's going to be backed up with 128-bit encryption on a secure server with redundant servers overseas, just in case something were to happen with it, because that's your intellectual property, and that could kill us if we lost people's business plans. We haven't decided yet, so we're working through Amazon Web Server, and so we'll just work through it with them. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks for letting me chat at you guys. Appreciate it.